Giving evidence to committees has been provided to you. And once again, just reminding senators that we do not ask officers of a department opinions on matters of policy. And we'll give people a chance to refer questions, and it doesn't preclude answering or asking questions about facts. For the record, could people please state their names and the capacity in which they appear?
Sorry, are we happy with media?
Okay, and yep, we've just got some media in the room. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. We'll start with Mr. Watson, go down there and then go online.
Thanks, Senator. Sam Watson, Executive General Manager, Government and International Relations at Swimming Australia.
Thank you, Senator. Rob Woodhouse, CEO of Swimming Australia.
Senator Simon Hollingsworth, CEO of Australian Athletics.
Senator Sarah Cook, CEO of Rowing Australia.
Great. And if we might go online, we'll start with hockey.
Alison Lyons, CEO of Hockey Queensland.
David Pryles, CEO, Hockey Australia.
Great. And Mr. Trim.
Trim, President of Paddle Australia.
Thank you, Mr. Trim. That did break up a little bit that time. We'll see how we go. Maybe if you want to turn your video off, that might just help with bandwidth. Audio will be more important. So thank you for that. Now, we've got some of you have made submissions. Thank you for that. There is an opportunity to make an opening statement if you'd like to. Would anyone like to do that? Yes, Ms. Cook? Okay. We'll start with you, Ms. Cook. Mr. Hollingsworth, you do? Anyone? Yep, okay. We'll start with Ms. Cook and go the other way. All right, over to you, Ms. Cook.
Thank you. Members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to address you today. The Olympic flame was first lit within me as I watched the broadcast of our Australian Olympic team march proudly into the stadium in 1992 in Barcelona. Growing up, I was fortunate to have the opportunity to engage in a wide variety of sporting activities which shaped my holistic development as a young person. For that 7-year-old kid, sport went on to play a hugely formative role in my life, and I had the privilege to represent our country and wear the green and gold at 2 Olympic Games. Now more than ever, and with the home games in Brisbane 2032, there is an unprecedented opportunity to capture the hearts and minds of Australians through the power of the Olympic and Paralympic movements. Just as it was in Sydney 2000, in 2032 we will have our chance again to unite the nation behind our team and to do what Aussies do best, show the rest of the world what we're made of. But time is of the essence. Our 11-year runway is dwindling and we are rapidly approaching 7 years to go. For the sport of rowing in LA and hopefully Brisbane, we will be multidisciplined for the first time with the introduction of beach sprints as well as the traditional classic rowing discipline. For classic flatwater rowing, we require a 2,000-metre 8 to 10 lane course that fits the specific technical requirements stipulated by our governing body, World Rowing. To that end, the sport of rowing is venue agnostic. We understand that about 10 venues have been considered throughout the respective bid, 60-day review and now 100-day review processes. Wyaralong Dam in the Scenic Rim is a feasible venue that, based on the significant analysis to date, meets our technical specifications. However, we support our colleagues at Paddle Australia in their request to have a thorough feasibility assessment of the Hinds Dam on the Gold Coast completed. To that end, we also support the feasibility assessments of any other venues in Queensland which have the potential to meet the technical specifications of the sport. Queensland is one of our most active states in the sport of rowing, but for almost 2 decades has been without a permanent home. Rowing Queensland currently uses Wyaralong Dam for many of its regattas, more than 30 weekends a year, as well as the courses in Rockhampton and Bundaberg. As it stands, we cannot run either a national championship or an international championship event for the sport in Queensland due to the lack of appropriate infrastructure. The Australian Rowing Championships attract more than 2,000 competitors and has an economic return on investment of 13 to 1. We would love to bring this event to Queensland when an appropriate venue can be developed. We support the findings of the 60-day review and specifically the inappropriateness of the Sydney International Regatta Centre in Penrith as a venue for the Games, due to the weather in July at the foot of the Blue Mountains, and also that this venue leaves no legacy for Queensland. Rowing estimates that in a 10-year period from venue completion, a new facility could attract an economic impact to the region in excess of $100 million. Considering the events that could be brought to Queensland, including Australian and state championship events for both rowing and paddle, as well as international events. Brisbane 2032 gives Queensland a massive opportunity to build its reputation as a global sporting destination, but it cannot happen in the absence of sporting facilities that can host national, let alone international events. As soon as we have venue facilities that enable us to host these events, we can start showcasing Queensland to the world. These assets need to be seen as revenue generators. These are legacy outcomes we don't have to wait 7 years until 2032 to leverage. We can deliver these outcomes as soon as the facilities come online. To support this, in our submission in the 100-day review, Rowan called on the Queensland Government to develop and appropriately fund an international and national sporting event strategy. This is not about investing millions of dollars for just 2 weeks in 2032, as some may describe it. This is about legacy through infrastructure for sport and communities from now for the next 2 decades, which will enable significant return on investment and economic impact through the hosting of domestic and international sporting events. With more than 13 million Australians participating in Olympic, Paralympic and Commonwealth sports, this is an investment in our future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Cook. Mr Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Senator, yes, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to the committee today. In 2023, Australian Athletics previously made a submission and appeared at this committee identifying a range of opportunities to grow the sport of athletics in Australia and make the most of international sporting events. 2032 is absolutely a unique event for the City of Brisbane, for the State of Queensland and for the whole nation of Australia. To be able to host Games so soon after Sydney is a rare privilege and one we must make the most of, absolutely. From the sport of athletics perspective, we have no doubt that our sport, athletics, will be one of the brightest stars of the 2032 show. This is not a statement made in hubris, it's backed by facts. I wanted to just quote some of the statistics from the Paris 2024 Games that Sebastian Coe, the President of World Athletics, just shared with us a couple of weeks ago. That showed that in Paris 2024, athletics was the #1 Olympic sport with the biggest broadcast reach of any Olympic sport, 1.1 billion people. The media reach was a broadcast of 24 billion. Social media growth was significant, and there was a full stadium every night in Paris with over 1 million tickets sold, which I understand was the most tickets of any event sold. Athletics was represented by 200 countries, 43 of whom won medals, and 75 had athletes in the finals. What we know from Sydney in 2000, from Melbourne in 2006 and from Gold Coast in 2018 is that Brisbane 2032 will be no different for the sport of athletics. You'll see packed stadiums, you'll see iconic moments, and you'll see truly global engagement with the world's most international sport. From our perspective, Australian Athletics is confident our homegrown talent will compete with pride and distinction, and there's a couple of names from Queensland athletes who are gaining a lot of attention already. Ever since the Games was announced, Australian Athletics has been really consistent about what our desire is for the Games, and given the role our sport plays in both the Olympics and the Paralympics, we think it is critical that there is a meaningful legacy for athletics. Similar to rowing, we're actually stadium agnostic in terms of the main stadium, but we consider that for a sport that has directly and indirectly more than 4 million participants right around the country, that would be a really unacceptable outcome for our sport to be left with no meaningful legacy. The Queensland Government, as the committee has noted, through the Games Independent Infrastructure Coordination Authority, is doing some really important work through its 100-day review, and we were really pleased to be able to present to that authority late last year on what our ideas are around what a legacy would look like for our sport. Our submission to the authority really focused on 3 outcomes that AA and Queensland Athletics would like from the sport and from Brisbane 2032, namely, 1, to provide an outstanding experience for our athletes and spectators during the Games. Number 2, to provide Queensland with the opportunity to fully leverage the significant pre-Games opportunities that we know will present and will create significant economic returns and community returns to Queensland and Australia. And 3, to leave a suitable legacy that we can leverage post the Games for both athletics, the Queensland community and the broader Australian community. In our view, there are various ways that this can be achieved, and we put some of those ideas forward to the 100-day review, and we look forward to its recommendations and, in due course, the government's response. Thank you, Senators, for this opportunity.
No worries. Thank you, Mr Hollingsworth. Mr Woodhouse.
Thank you, Senator. Swimming Australia, I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to appear before today's hearing. We're a very proud swimming nation with a rich history and a bright future for the sport. Swimming Australia is the custodian of Australia's leading Olympic and Paralympic sport, as well as Australia's most popular participation sport. And we're grateful for the government's and the Parliament's support for our work in inspiring Australia through swimming. Swimming Australia initially made a submission to this inquiry in May 2023 with a focus on investment required to deliver sustained high-performance success. And at the outset, I'd like to acknowledge the investments made by the government since that time, which have supported the Dolphins on the path to great success in Paris and delivered a welcome boost on the path to Los Angeles in 2028. Alongside other sports, we'll continue to advocate for investment certainty over the cycle through to LA and beyond to Brisbane 2032, with current investment allocations through to June 2026 only at the moment. I'd like to make a few opening remarks regarding infrastructure planning for Brisbane 2032, which we anticipate is of particular interest to the committee here today. Swimming Australia welcomes the 100-day review initiated by the Queensland Government late last year. We've consistently advocated that current venue plans for the Games are a missed opportunity to deliver much-needed investment in aquatic infrastructure for Brisbane. Swimming Australia has made a joint submission to the 100-day review, together with Diving Australia, Water Polo Australia and Artistic Swimming Australia and Norta, a Brisbane-based property and infrastructure advisory firm. Brisbane's major aquatic infrastructure is substantially outdated and creates shared challenges for the aquatic sports, including daily access to quality water space and adequate amenities, as well as constraints hosting major events. Our joint submission to the 100-day review proposes the development of a national aquatic centre in Brisbane as a generational opportunity to develop a community asset of national significance, which integrates high-performance excellence with community access and major event capability. The National Aquatic Centre would also host an aquatic sports competition at the Brisbane 2032 Games, but it's needed regardless of the Games. The National Aquatic Centre proposal is supported by World Aquatics, the Australian Olympic Committee and Paralympics Australia, and would be developed adjacent to and integrated with Brisbane's existing Centenary Pool in close proximity to Brisbane's CBD and transport connections. The National Aquatic Centre's design concept includes 3 new pools with functionality to support multiple aquatic sports in training and events modes, alongside a range of other community and high-performance amenities as a national home for the 4 aquatic sports. Importantly, the National Aquatic Centre will also be a community hub, providing grassroots access for year-round use, from hosting school carnivals, club meets through to learn to swim classes and lap swimming. The National Aquatic Centre will unlock significant economic, health and social benefits for Queensland and the nation over the decades beyond 2032, and it's our proposal that the development of the National Aquatic Centre is jointly funded by the Commonwealth and Queensland governments, in line with arrangements for other 2032 venue investments. As it stands, it's disappointing the Games will deliver no venue legacy benefits for Australia's #1 Olympic and Paralympic sport. We urge the committee and governments to support the National Aquatic Centre to ensure the Games deliver a lasting positive legacy for our sports and for our community. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And now we'll just go online and check. Did Hockey Australia or Queensland have an opening statement?
Yes, we do, Senator.
Okay, over to you.
Members of the committee, good afternoon. As the CEO of Hockey Australia, I wish to express my thanks on behalf of our entire sport for the opportunity of appearing before you today. I also acknowledge my colleague Alison sitting next to me from Hockey Queensland, who will be making a brief statement after myself. Alison is, of course, a rabidly parochial Queenslander, but for me, as a Victorian whose state missed out on tremendous opportunities that the 2026 Commonwealth Games would have delivered the state, and also in wearing my hat as CEO of Hockey Australia, we cannot stand idly by to see this generational opportunity for our sport be squandered. The committee is no doubt aware of the significant crossover and commonality that exists between the terms of reference for this inquiry and the terms of reference for the Queensland Government's 100-day review. This shared focus provided us with an opportunity as a sport to lodge our joint submission to the 100-day review with this committee for your consideration as well. I will leave it to Alison to walk you through the gross inadequacies of the existing Games venue master plan for 2032, but I wanted to make a short statement about the concept of legacy. Since the Games were awarded on the 21st of July 2021, there has been much discussion about legacy. Hockey's contention is that legacy is not something to be activated after the Games are over, and is not something we should be waiting for. To do so ensures that the beneficial economic, community and sporting development opportunities in this critical pre-2032 phase will be lost completely, and post-Games outcomes will be significantly reduced. Legacy starts now and extends through the Games period and into the future post-2032. The legacy we are seeking develops the whole of the sport, not just for the elite. One of the best examples we can provide you is where we are speaking to you from this afternoon at Sydney Olympic Park Hockey Centre at Homebush in Sydney. Over 24 years later, after the Sydney Olympic Games were held, it is still being used by the next generation of players. It is a prime example of an Olympic legacy facility that endures. Thank you, and I'll hand over now to Alison.
Thank you, David, and good afternoon, members of the committee. I can see Senator Canavan on screen, so it's good to know I'm not the only parochial Queenslander here today. Senators, the stark and embarrassing reality is that as of today, Brisbane, a newly minted Olympic city, and Queensland as a whole for that matter, cannot host an international hockey tournament. Our submission to the 100-day review is all about how hockey can contribute to the game's success and leave a lasting legacy for Queensland and communities and athletes. Our submission has been deliberately structured in two parts. The first part was the immediate and urgent need to address the Olympic venue for 2032 and the wider whole of state legacy impacts, which we are lodging with the supplementary submission next week. And we will also provide this copy to the committee. The key point that emerges from our analysis of Queensland's state of readiness and in noting the focus and terms of reference of the 100-day review in utilising legacy assets and the need for cost efficiency is that the Gold Coast Hockey Centre is the most logical venue for hockey during Brisbane 2032. It is a tried games location, a facility asset, and having hosted the 2018 Commonwealth Games, it only requires minor upgrades to meet the Olympic requirements. The Gold Coast is cost-effective, ready to go and aligns perfectly with the review's terms of reference and the Games principles of making the most of existing venues. In addition, we have a commitment from the Gold Coast City Council to co-fund the upgrades. It has proven mass transport connections and is very close proximity to the designated athlete village at Robina. In short, for us, it's a no-brainer for the 2032 Olympic hockey venue to be at the Gold Coast. The current Games master plan of temporary drop-in, rip-out pitches at Ballymore is a disastrous choice. It's flood-prone, has significant transport and access constraints, and provides no legacy for hockey at all. David rightly says that legacy needs to be viewed in three parts: during, after, and most importantly, before the Games. This will provide a fundamental opportunity to host prior events. Making the minor upgrades to the Gold Coast will allow us to host pre-games, which are revenue generators. Even our domestic events provide a return on investment of 20 to 1. And these returns also need to be viewed through the lens that hockey is a global sport, as hockey is a top 10 global participation sport, which will provide the Gold Coast and Queensland an opportunity to be a shop front to the world. As soon as we have these facilities that enable us to host these events, we can start showcasing Queensland to the world and generating revenue, as these facility assets need to be seen as revenue generators. These are legacy outcomes we don't have to wait 8 years for. We can deliver these outcomes as soon as the facility improvements are complete. We are committed to ensuring hockey makes a meaningful contribution to 2032 before, during and after the Games, but we cannot deliver any of these legacy outcomes with a drop-in, rip-out pitch that will only be played on for 14 days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And look, last but not least, Mr Trim, did you have an opening statement?
Just to let you know, I've changed. You hear me okay now?
Mr Trim, I might just pause you there. I'm sorry, the audio is still very scratchy. We might ask you, would you be able to phone in? I'll give you time later to make that statement. If you could phone in to that. I think the secretaries provide you a number. If they haven't, or if you haven't got it, get onto them, and that should fix it. Okay, well, we might go to questions then and hopefully come back to Mr Trim before we move on. Senator Mackenzie, I was going to go to you first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you. I just want to go to Swimming Australia. There's been concerns for a long time and around the drop-in, drop-out pool and taxpayers' contribution to that and the lack of legacy for swimmers. It seemed your preferred option is to have a new National Aquatic Centre, $650 million, as I understand it, at the existing Centenary pool. Were you consulted about the plans to have the drop-in, drop-out pool for 32?
No, Senator. There was no consultation at all about that. We found out about it when everyone else did.
Right. Is there any process within the international context for Swimming Australia to make representations to the international swimming body? Is that who would have been consulted as part of the development of the plan? We don't know who was consulted within the swimming world, if you like, but certainly World Aquatics the governing body, are supporting our proposal for a National Aquatic Centre. They understand that the aquatics infrastructure in Brisbane is very, very outdated. The most modern pool is the 1982 Commonwealth Games pool. I competed there in 1982. I'll say I was 2 years old. I was about 16 years old, but that's the pool where we have our trials. Had our trials last year, and it's got great memories. The pool, of course, but it's not suitable for international competition and not suitable for most domestic competitions either. Right. So the international body is very clear about supporting your request. Have they made that request clear to the IOC?
I'm not sure if they've made it directly to the IOC, but they've provided support. They've attended some of our briefing sessions. They've provided a letter of support, which has been included in our submission to the 100-day review as well.
And is the IOC supportive of Swimming Australia's position?
Sorry, Senator, I couldn't hear the question.
Is the AOC supportive of Swimming Australia?
Yes, they are. Like Paralympics Australia and World Aquatics, they also provided a letter of support from the President and the CEO.
So you don't know who thought the drop-in, drop-out pool was a good idea?
No, but look, the drop-in pool was a success in Paris. People talk about the success of the drop-in pool and the crowds. There's one in particular outstanding French swimmer, Léon Marchand, and I was fortunate enough to be there, Senator, and it was fantastic. But the best legacy of the Olympics across all the sports was the fact that a brand new aquatic centre was built in Paris, and that was used for the other aquatic sports, and that now becomes the home of swimming, diving, water polo and artistic swimming in France, and it's being used for the European Championships next year as an example. So, it has been done before, but we believe that the cost investment is an investment in a facility which is going to have such great community use ongoing, not just for the next 2 years or for 2 weeks during the Games, but for the next 50, 60 years is very, very valuable.
What about the aquatic infrastructure nationally? Obviously, you're talking specifically about Queensland. This isn't just the Brisbane Games, it's an Australian Games. It's going to have the federal taxpayer assisting in funding these facilities and transport infrastructure. Can you talk us through the aquatic infrastructure more broadly in the national footprint and how you would see the potential for a new facility in Brisbane complementing what already exists?
Certainly. The current Brisbane Aquatic Centre is the most outdated of all the capital mainland cities. I think the most recent one is the Melbourne Sports and Aquatic Centre, built around 2004, 2005, and Sydney Olympic Park before that, of course. But so the major aquatic centres are outdated. One of the benefits of building this National Aquatic Centre for all four of the aquatic sports, but particularly for swimming, is when we do host these international events, and we are planning a whole raft of different events to bring swimming to the fans here in Australia, because there is a big demand for it. We know that a lot of athletes and teams from other countries will be coming in, not just coming into Brisbane to compete, but coming in to prepare for those big competitions right through Queensland, and particularly North Queensland, where even the Australian Dolphins go and have their training camps as well.
In part of our role, and all of us on this call that are representatives, are being lobbied left, right and centre by local councils who are now having deteriorating legacy projects, shall we say, of the old 1956 Olympic-sized swimming pools, which are in every country town. Probably not left many in the suburbs, but they are a great legacy for country areas over many, many decades, but are now coming to end of life. Is Swimming Australia looking at that more community legacy type of arrangement rather than just for, I understand you're saying it's a community venue, as MSAC is down here, but there was something quite visionary, I think, about making sure even the smallest country towns shared in that Olympic dream and vision and spirit post-56 with the Olympic swimming pool program.
Absolutely, Senator, and it's quite remarkable that there were so many pools built, and that's why they're called Olympic pools, because they were built off the back of the 1956 Olympics, and a lot of them are starting to close down. They're falling apart, and concrete cancer and things like that, and it's becoming more and more difficult for councils, local councils, to keep them updated and maintained. Strangely enough, that's one of the issues with the Brisbane Aquatic Centre. That's obviously a major centre, but the maintenance costs are getting exorbitant. So I'm sure it won't be around in 15, 20 years' time. But that community aspect of swimming pools is absolutely crucial from a health and lifestyle and wellbeing point of view across the country. We are advocating as a governing body for local council support to keep pools open in the first place, and to contribute funds to keep them maintained so they can stay open for decades to come.
Hockey Australia, I just wanted to ask you a question about the Ballymore proposal and the new synthetic pitch at your preferred site on the Gold Coast. What modelling have you done around that preference?
So, in our interview with the committee, we believe the costs are upwards of $30 million at Ballymore for drop-in. So that's $30 million that delivers no legacy for the game of hockey. Whereas on the Gold Coast, we believe the costs to be up to around $6 to $10 million, of which the Gold Coast City Council will pay half of those costs. Plus, it will give us a legacy.
Okay, and your $30 million price tag's based on what?
Based on what the committee has notified us when we submitted our review.
What consultation? So you've made it clear, Hockey Australia's made it clear your preferred option, yes?
Correct.
And has international hockey been advised of Hockey Australia's views?
They have.
And have they then let the IOC or the Queensland Government or the organising committee or the AOC know?
We're unsure if they've let them know. They are very supportive of this Olympic Games delivering a legacy outcome for the sport, and that's where they're fully supportive of the Gold Coast, because it will deliver legacy for our sport. As I mentioned in our statement, Senator, the new generation of Hockeyroos and Kookaburras played last night here against the Olympic champions in the Dutch and the silver medalists in the Chinese in a facility that really hasn't been touched since the Sydney Olympic Games, which we all know the Hockeyroos won gold.
Yeah, no, I get that. I'm just trying to understand how you're applying pressure to the decision makers. And is that coming through you? Are you also going through the IOC, through the international body? I want to know who knows what and how seriously they're taking it.
Thank you, Senator. From 2021, when the announcement was made that hockey would be held with drop-in rip-out pitches at Ballymore, we had been advocating for legacy. So Hockey Queensland and Hockey Australia have been advocating since that time with the Queensland Government and with the decision makers within Council, Brisbane City Council and also Gold Coast City Council to think about changing that decision to put forward a legacy infrastructure for hockey. We've completed a major infrastructure feasibility study which outlines that we actually have a deficit of synthetic pitches in Brisbane of up to 7 turfs that we require in Brisbane. So through this process, yes, we've done a lot of advocating and lobbying. We have consulted with the FIH, who have also been, and we actually had President Tayyab Ikram from the FIH out here last year, and we met with Premier Miles at the time around the need to build infrastructure for hockey. So yes, they have been working with us through this process.
And we have
So
a full alignment.
does the AOC publicly and privately support your pitch, shall we say?
We're unsure.
Well, we should have heard from you. We might put that on notice to Mr Carroll. Thank you. I have no further questions, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Now, I might just use this break to check if Mr Trim, have you phoned in?
I have phoned in. Can you hear me now, Senator?
That's a lot better. We can hear you loud and clear. So, Mr Trim, sorry about that, but I'll give you an opportunity to make that opening statement now.
Thank you. So thanks to the committee and letting me talk today. I'm the president of Paddle Australia. So by way of brief explanation, canoe-kayak events at the Olympic and Paralympic Games are a combination of 2 distinct sports, you could call it. So sprint, which is flat water, and slalom, which is the whitewater. At the Olympic Games, races are held on whitewater and flat water events. At the Paralympic Games, events are only held on flat water as para-canoe events. At the outset, I'll let you know some disclosures. I'm a Queenslander, I'm a kayak paddler. I lived in the Redlands region for over 15 years and my children went to school there. So I have a vested interest. I trained for the 1996 Atlanta Olympic Games in the Redlands and I'm a life member of the Redlands Canoe Club. I was fortunate enough to be the beneficiary of elite pathways, one of which was provided by the Queensland Academy of Sport, and I'm one of the top 10 athletes of the decade between 1990 and 2000. I had the honour of representing Australia at 3 Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games, with the same partner, Daniel Collins, in the K2 500, and we were bronze and silver medalists, bronze in Atlanta and silver in Sydney. So I need to concede to what I'll describe. I have an informed bias as to what our sport delivers for community, our community, the paddlers, the athletes, the families that support those athletes, and the places we train and compete. I'm very proud of our paddlers and what we've achieved over the years at the Olympics and recently at the Paris Olympic Games. We have 12 Olympic gold medalists overall from paddling, 13 silver medalists and 28 bronze medalists. The para-canoe, we've only had 3 Olympic Games, Rio, Tokyo and Paris. We've got 9 medals in total, 4 gold, 3 silver, 2 bronze. And in Paris, 11 out of our 18 athletes from our sport came home with a medal, so 61% of our team. And of course, Jess Fox was the Olympic team flag bearer. Jess and Noemi won every women's canoe slalom medal that was available. And every male sprint team member came home with a medal. And every para-canoe team athlete came home with a medal. So as Australians, we've got a lot to be proud of with our paddlers at Olympic and Paralympic level. As a sport, we wanted to avail ourselves to this opportunity to speak with you today. As you're aware, there is a significant degree of similarity between the terms of reference for this inquiry and the government's 100-day review of the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games infrastructure. So as a sport, we made the decision to share with this committee our submission to the 100-day review process, and we're happy for that submission to be public. We have also participated in a series of gateway reviews, project validation reports and previous Queensland Government 60-day review process, which examined both the proposed venue for our whitewater and flatwater events. At times, we feel a little frustrated by the confidentiality attached to these various review processes, not from a compliance perspective, the more that we're restricted in our ability to rebut inaccurate information that is put into the marketplace. So to the extent we are able, we want to take this opportunity to share that 100-day review with you and discuss two main issues. While we know that the Redlands Whitewater Centre will be an absolute jewel in Queensland's 2032 crown, and that's before, during and after the Games, and Wirralong, which we share with rowing as a proposed flatwater venue as well, delivers very little legacy for our sport, and why we are asking that an urgent and thorough feasibility study be undertaken of Hinds Dam. I look forward to your questions, and thank you again for the opportunity, and my apologies for our problems with the sound earlier.
No problems, Mr Trim. We made it work. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to go to Senator Allman-Payne.
Thanks very much, Chair. My questions are for Mr Woodhouse and Swimming Australia. And I do want to preface it by saying I was one of those young people who grew up in a small regional town in Queensland that had an Olympic pool, and I spent much of my youth attending swim meets at Chandler Aquatic Centre. So I was one of those young people who watched the Commonwealth Games and thought it was pretty awesome and got in the pool. So I totally understand the value of a good venue. Notwithstanding that, I want to ask whether Swimming Australia, I guess when it put together its proposal for the Centenary Pool and the adjacent Victoria Park, was Swimming Australia aware of the concerns around the fact that item 15.3 of the host contract requires that the host, Olympic Committee, Organising Committee and Government ensures that they're not located in or adjacent to statutory nature, cultural protected areas or heritage sites? And was Swimming Australia or is Swimming Australia aware of the fact that Victoria Park is actually part of the Queensland State Heritage Register? Was that taken into account when that proposal was pulled together?
Thank you, Senator. And yes, I do share your concerns and totally appreciate your views. And to answer the question, were we aware of 15.3? It was not. We're not aware of the details of the host contract. No. But we did engage and have engaged for our proposal various expert consultants, for example, Gaskell Planning Consultants that did the preliminary town planning for us, so the assessment they undertook. And that assessment indicated the land that we're proposing to have the facility built on is zoned for sport and recreation and suitable for accommodating major sporting facilities. We certainly expect the local environmental factors to be addressed as part of any detailed site planning in line with established practice if our proposal gets to the point where it is considered suitable to proceed for further analysis.
Mm-hmm. And so was Swimming Australia also aware then or not aware of 15.1 and 15.2 in the host contract, which goes to the sustainability and the climate positive role of the Olympics and the concerns then around actually removing, I guess, concreting over, a significant part of the parkland that's currently being rewilded, et cetera, et cetera?
I'm not sure if Swimming Australia was aware of that, the exact 15.1, but certainly has given careful consideration to those local environmental factors, including avoiding established vegetation areas and maintaining and ideally enhancing visual integrity of the area and so forth. All aspects of heritage values, for example, need careful consideration in that detailed site planning that would take place if this venue is recommended for further investigation and analysis.
I'm certainly aware, I guess, through previous hearings that we've had and the previous review, which is now being superseded by the current one, was certainly aware at the time that there were consultants, who were putting up proposals for venues around the city off the back of their own architectural designs or the like, and I'm sure that certain consultants, can see that there's a a financial opportunity there. Was it the case that Swimming Australia put forward the idea of building in Victoria Park, or was that proposed by a consultant to Swimming Australia?
Thanks, Senator. Swimming Australia are actually very late to the party on this one. I only joined Swimming Australia in April 2024. Until then, the other aquatic sports were involved, and they had engaged with Norta, a infrastructure advisory firm, who are working on a pro bono basis, and they were working on various plans, and they were very much site agnostic, and to a degree still are, but very much site agnostic in terms of where this proposed site might be. But given the topography of the land and various other factors that were considered, and particularly it being adjacent to the Centenary Pool site, this was the site that was considered by far to be the best possible venue, best possible location.
I guess that depends on what the criteria are for best. I mean, if you're prioritising green space in the middle of the city, you might have a different view. Is it the case that Swimming Australia's priority, because I certainly understand the shock and concern. I certainly, as I said, as a former swimmer, when I saw the idea of, we're going to drop a pool in and then just take it away, that seems incredibly wasteful. Is the priority of Swimming Australia to have an aquatic centre at Victoria Park, or is the priority of Swimming Australia to have a national aquatic centre that is a legacy venue, that is permanent, as opposed to necessarily it having to be at Victoria Park?
Yeah, it's the latter, Senator. It's having a national aquatic centre that is permanent. It provides that legacy for all four aquatic sports across high performance, all the way down to the pathways and the pipeline and the clubs and so on, and also one that provides fantastic community use. So that's our number one priority. As I mentioned, all the different possible locations and alternatives were considered at length by the experts and by the governing bodies as well, and this was the site which was highly recommended.
All right, so notwithstanding it's been recommended, Swimming Australia's priority is having a legacy venue, and if it turns out that there can be a better site for that that's not going to impinge on heritage values, First Nations land, city green space, then that's a potential option on the table.
It's absolutely a potential option. Again, we have considered, and I think that a lot of experts have considered a lot of different venues, and this is weighing up all of those factors. But whatever happens moving forward, all of those really important considerations need to be analysed in great detail.
All right, thanks very much. That's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Payne. I've just got a few before we wrap up. As I think I highlighted earlier, one of the criteria of the 100-day review is benefits to rural and regional Queensland, and it is one of the Queensland Government's priorities, I note too. What are your proposals to either the 100-day review or previously decided benefits regional Queensland as a result of the Games? Anyone? This is a question to everybody. So anyone want to go first?
I can start, Senator.
Yep.
For us, as I briefly mentioned before, particularly the north of Queensland is vitally important for the sport of swimming. We've had some great athletes come from North Queensland and win Olympic gold medals and World Championships and Paralympic gold medals as well, and long may that continue. Some of the pools up there, they are ageless compared to other places in Australia, but Swimming Australia and the Dolphins still use some of those facilities for regular training camps. In fact, before, I think it was just after the Olympic trials and Paralympic trials, Dean Boxall's team went up to Townsville, I think it was, for camps. And so Swimming Australia will continue to use those facilities. We do have plans for expanding our national and international events here in Australia, and Queensland is an obvious venue if this facility is built in Brisbane, and that will bring lots of teams to Australia. And those teams don't just turn up 1 or 2 days before an event, they go and train somewhere for a couple of weeks, and North Queensland is usually the place, not just because of the climate and the weather, but great hospitality, and of course they always love getting a great steak in Rockhampton.
Are there new investments as a result in regional Queensland?
Any new investments?
Yeah, new. No. Any others?
Not from
that wanna-
swimming.
Any others? Go Miss Cook.
Yes.
No, yep. We'll go to Miss Cook first. I also note hockey. You've got your hand up. We'll get there. Yep. Sorry.
Yes, we hope that the Games will stimulate investment throughout regional Queensland as well. We have obviously very passionate pockets of the sport throughout Queensland, including in Rockhampton, as I mentioned earlier, Bundaberg, Longreach. So it is our hope that the infrastructure upgrades throughout the state can help to invest in some of what we know is really crumbling infrastructure. We know that Rockhampton is a really important base for Rowing Australia. The Australian rowing team prepared for Tokyo, which was one of our most successful games there. We held our staging camp. It would be our intention to do the same for both LA and for Brisbane. We did hope to prepare for the World Championships in Shanghai this year in Rockhampton, but unfortunately due to the lack of infrastructure, the course was washed away late last year, and also no permanent ablution facilities to service the team. We are unable to do that, which is deeply upsetting for the team, because we do hope that Rockhampton will be our home away from home and very much get behind our team as we lead into those Olympic campaigns. So we very much hope that there will be a national but also a statewide lens, particularly for Queensland, off the back of these games.
Okay, thank you. Mr Hollingsworth?
Thanks, Senator. Just reiterating a point and adding another one to my colleagues. In relation to the opportunities before the Games, absolutely what we know is that international teams will want to come to Australia and to base themselves here, not just in the year before the Olympics and the Paralympics, but many years before. That was absolutely experienced in 2000. And by way of example, Townsville and the track there has been a popular place for athletes to base themselves, and we expect there'll be other opportunities, and also opportunities for councils hopefully to invest in their athletic infrastructure. The broader point I'd make about legacy, though, and perhaps to add some colour to it, is that legacy is not just about infrastructure. And I want to give you a really great example of that, and that is from the Sydney Olympics. So there's loads of great infrastructure legacy from those games, but one of the most significant for our sport has been the Sydney Marathon, which is a mass participation event which has now got 25,000 competitors, growing to 35,000 this year to next year. There's no reason why, as part of the Games legacy, and we would absolutely encourage governments to be involved in this, is in creating legacy events that can last beyond the Games. For example, you could have Olympic, Paralympic participation runs that are run annually after the Games or in the lead up to the Games that involve thousands of people from young to old actively involved. And you can do that across a number of sports, of course. So I think legacy has that impact in relation to infrastructure. And I understand that's what the 100-day review is focused on. But there's also a really important part around participation and utilising the other assets that might exist and engaging with the community from a participation perspective.
Okay. And as I mentioned, hockey, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, before I pass to my colleague, Alison, just noting that two of the greatest players to ever play our sport do come from Rockhampton, and Jamie Dwyer and Mark Knowles. I've already written to a lot of my colleagues, in fact 8 CEOs from other nations, around utilising Queensland as a base, not just in the lead up to 2032, but starting now. There's a facility, as you mentioned, in Rockhampton. There's a decent facility in Cairns. There's a facility in Townsville. So we've already written to the other countries to be able to get them to come down here to utilise those facilities in the lead up to events that we host in Australia.
And we also have 16,000 members throughout Queensland, from Cairns, Townsville, Bundaberg, Mackay, Rockhampton, Gladstone, Gympie, Sunshine Coast. We're out to Toowoomba. We are everywhere within Queensland. And this is what our second part of the submission will really focus on, is ensuring that those centres that actually develop the players that are going to be there in 2032 have got the support and infrastructure they need to be able to help these players perform at their best come 2032. Queensland actually has the strongest female pathway in Australia, and we need to make sure that we're providing a lot of great environments for those young women and men to really develop their skills. So we're taking home gold medals in 2032 in the same way that we did in Sydney 2000.
Okay, thank you. Just moving on, I just wanted to follow up from Senator Payne on Victoria Park. This was quite a topic of conversation at our hearing or last hearing we had in Brisbane. At the time, I think we only really discussed the athletics stadium being there and related training fields. Now I see there's a proposal for aquatics as well. I mean, what's the cumulative impact here? There were already very large concerns about taking away that green space from the local community, and I was up staying there recently, and there's a lot of community opposition. How much of the park will be taken up if both the aquatics and the athletics are there?
The aquatics centre it's still technically part of Victoria Park, but it's actually on the other side of the inner city bypass.
Right.
So where the Centenary Pool is, there's a parcel of land that is technically part of Victoria Park, but the main part of the park is actually across the inner city bypass. I'm not from Brisbane, so I can't be any more detailed.
So is it taking up green space, so to speak? What your proposal is?
Yes.
It will take up some of that.
Yes, it is.
I know what you're referring to. Okay, and Mr. Hollingsworth, what proportion of the park was?
Yeah.
Well, I think we probably have that from the former hearing, but
I understand. Senator, in terms of the actual, from athletics perspective, there's a distinction between what might end up being the main stadium for the Olympics and for the athletics, and what we consider as what would be a legacy for the sport, and they're actually two different things. So, from our perspective, we're not looking for a 60,000 seat track and field stadium that's permanently left after the games. What we're looking for is a fit for purpose stadium, and one of our proposals is that could be what will effectively be the warm-up track for wherever the main stadium is. So if it was in Victoria Park, wherever the main stadium is for the track and field at the Olympics in 2032 and Paralympics, a full 400-metre track, warm-up track is required, as was required in any international event. And our proposal is that would be the legacy. The warm-up track could be left as a legacy and configured in an international context for 10 to 15,000 people, as it was, for example, in Sydney. So in terms of the impact of wherever the main stadium is, it will need a warm-up stadium, so the impact of those two. I'm not sure what that would look like in Victoria Park.
Is that the proposal of Victoria Park, to keep the warm-up stadium long term?
I haven't seen the specifics.
So I suppose the risk with Victoria Park from your proposal would be that that's a very central location to keep two stadiums. It's a lot of land taken up right near Brisbane. Has that been raised with you at all as a concern?
We haven't been consulted directly on Victoria Park, but it is absolutely true that wherever the main stadium is, whether it's Victoria Park or another location, hosting an international athletics event requires a warm-up facility, and so it will require two tracks.
And that was the committee put shade on the Gabba proposal for that reason. That it's very, very difficult to do that in that part of Brisbane. But I do wonder then, keeping two. So I was going to ask, but your basic understanding is that any main stadium, they'll rip out the track post the games. They'll rip out the track and have that to play cricket and AFL or whatever.
That has been our concern.
Yeah.
And I mean, that has been realised in the last two international events, in 2006 and 2018 Commonwealth Games. Effectively, it's like for swimming, it's a drop-in pool. It's a track, but the stadium is effectively used for other sports, cricket and AFL and other sports. And the legacy for athletics is non-existent. So under our proposal, there's two propositions. Regardless of what the Queensland Government's decision is around the main stadium, there will need to be a warm-up stadium. So that could be a legacy for the sport of athletics in the way that it occurred in Sydney. Or alternatively, and I guess to Rob's point from swimming, the legacy from the 1982 Commonwealth Games is currently the venue for athletics in Queensland, which is the 50-year-old venue, which needs to be upgraded regardless of whatever decisions are made. And we would contend that is also a modest upgrade to that facility could be a lasting legacy for the sport, and indeed used as part of the lead up to and even during the games. It could possibly even be used as a warm-up track depending on where the final main stadium was and how the access could be done between those two stadiums, as has been done in other cities. So there's a couple of options we've put forward to the committee. But drop-in tracks into major stadiums will leave no legacy for the sport, and that would be, from our perspective, a great disappointment.
Okay. I just want to turn to another issue then now, Paddle Australia and possibly rowing as well, but particularly Paddle Australia, your submission on page, hang on, I might have different, page 4 of your submission. Sorry? Oh, okay. Sorry, I did miss. That was remiss of me. I believe Swimming Australia has to go.
I do apologise.
So I might just ask: is everybody okay if we release Swimming Australia? No other questions. I'm fine with it. Yep, my other senators are fine. Thank you for your time. Sorry, remiss of me. I did get the
Thank
message.
you for the opportunity.
I hope you make your plane.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll keep going with others though. Paddle Australia, as I said in your submission, you say that. I think I just want to clarify. You're saying that the paddle and rowing events comprised 8% of the overall cohort, like 10,500 athletes. Is that right?
If you combine the athletes between rowing and kayak, yeah.
Really? It's amazing. Right. Okay.
Two big sports. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that with the Warralong proposal? How many beds do they have to build to accommodate that many people? They have to build, I suppose, something like 11,000 beds.
There's 10,000 athletes, so 1,100 beds.
11,000, you mean? Sorry.
There's 10,800 athletes or 10,400 athletes overall at the Olympic Games.
Yep.
So we're 8% of that. So
oh, you're 8% of that. Okay, that's what I misinterpreted.
800 beds.
Okay, right. Okay, all right. That's a little bit more reasonable. I was going to say we're going to build a new city. Okay, all right. Okay, it's still a very large proportion of the athletes. A big deal then, obviously. Look, I wanted to. You've obviously put on the table Hinds Dam. Why aren't you putting Warralong forward or accepting it, I suppose, as the current proposal?
From a paddling perspective, Senator, as you would know, it's a fair way from Brisbane and the Gold Coast. So our high performance unit is based on the Gold Coast. We have visiting international teams come to train there, but the only world-class course that we can really see at the moment is in Sydney. Warralong if we're going to bring a world championship to Australia, we're going to bring a world championship to Queensland. Accommodation, transport, it's a long way to get a lot of people. And from a paddling perspective, we only need 1,000 metres. We don't need the 2,000 metres that rowing needs. So we don't need that length of course. Obviously, we're tied together at the Olympic Games, but World Championships and things, we just wouldn't go back there.
Right. Okay. It's presumably it makes sense from an economic perspective to keep the sports together for the Olympic Games. We wouldn't have two venues.
It's the preference. It's the preference of both international bodies. There is a precedent in Barcelona, the Barcelona Olympic Games. We were separated from rowing. We had a 1,000-metre course at Castelldefels, I think it was. So there is a precedence to being separated. There's an option for us for Coomera. Gold Coast City Council has put that up as a possible course. We would prefer not to split from rowing. Historically, we have been together, and it is obviously cost-effective for the IOC to run both events together.
Okay. And maybe just to bring rowing in here, you've also suggested that at least Hinds Dam should be considered, in your view. There had been a former study, I think, done about it. Were you able to see that study, that feasibility study, and was it wrong in its conclusions, in your view?
We haven't seen a full feasibility study. Certainly we haven't been provided one or given visibility on one. We know that a desktop analysis was done on a number of venues.
Okay.
So we wouldn't see that anything extensive that we're aware of has been done on Hinds. If that exists, we would absolutely welcome that being made public. We have held national rowing events on Hinds previously, including, I think, national championships. I raced an Australian University Championships on Hinds in 2005. So, it has been used as a venue. We know that the dam wall was raised in 2011 because water levels were a concern prior to that, but we understand that since the wall was raised, it hasn't dropped below 85% capacity.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, and obviously that'd be something for a feasibility study, but it is connected to the water grid, isn't it? And obviously subject to dry periods potentially, but you're confident with the wall being raised, it can, for the legacy, it can stay at a reasonable level?
Certainly the levels that we've seen over the last 14 years since the wall was raised would indicate that would be fine. And so for that reason, we would like to see that explored as a venue. I guess what is unknown is the Olympic overlay and the permanent infrastructure and the orientation of a course and that infrastructure. We're just not sure. Right. We just don't know whether that's possible or not. Okay. So we would certainly urge that to be considered. Okay, great.
Senator Mackenzie, I think, had another... Oh, sorry, Mr Trim wanted to add something, and then I'll go to Senator Mackenzie. Mr Trim, did you have a comment to make? Yep, further comment?
Yes, just quickly, I think one of the great advantages of HINS is the athletes would be accommodated at the sub-site on the Gold Coast, so you wouldn't be having to build a completely new village. I think that's another advantage. And I think there was a desktop feasibility study done, but what we're requesting is let's have a good look at it.
Sure. I'd say Rock Vegas is a much better place than the Gold Coast anyway. But Senator Mackenzie, over to you.
Well, that's a nice little segue. Thanks, Chair. I understood that the 100-day review had a specific terms of reference related to rural and regional Queensland's participation and opportunity with respect to the Olympic Games and legacy, etc., etc. Now, I understand the benefit of the pre-Games training space, etc. I would like, and this is probably a question on notice because I know we're pushing against time now, on notice, if each of these NSOs could provide the committee with the different way you have addressed that specific term of reference in your submission to the 100-day review as opposed to your original perspective. Because as I sit here and listen, there's a lot of lovely words about how many fabulous athletes come from the regions. We don't all end up at the Olympics. Some of us, like Senator Altman-Payne and I, end up really great phys ed teachers who are now senators. But the regions produce great athletes, as you've all made the case. We're just not confident. I want to understand in more detail how you've changed your submission and your perspective of Brisbane 32 in response to the Queensland Government's 100-day review, making it quite explicit around rural and regional Queensland opportunities. That's one for on notice. Thank you.
Are we taking that as a comment, I think, or is there a question?
No, they're going to provide the difference between their original plans and the changed plan with respect to the 100-day review, rural and regional content. On notice?
Or yes, okay. All right, that's understood by everyone, and we might just ask the committee to forward that to Swimming Australia as well, who have left early. Thank you for that. And look, I've just got one final thing. Some people have mentioned making a second submission to the 100-day review, and as a fellow submitter, I didn't know that was possible. Is that possible? I just declare an interest there, but is it?
Well, this probably addresses Senator Mackenzie's question on notice, which is that we intend to, and we identified in our submission that we would be making a supplementary submission. Obviously, we only found out about the review, I think it was the 10th of December, and submissions were required on the 10th of January.
Tell me about it.
So the Christmas period after an Olympic and Paralympic year was not an ideal time for us to be doing a major piece of work. So we did indicate that we would like more time to consider particularly that regional and rural element in our case, and so that's something we intend to address in this supplementary submission, which we've indicated to the review panel we'll submit by the end of next week. So we would be happy to forward that on to the committee once we've completed that.
So I didn't have to interrupt my holidays finishing mine. But anyway, all right, thank you very much to everyone. If there are no more questions, thank you very much for giving us your time again to this committee. It has been very useful to date. And I think some questions have been taken on notice. We're asking for those back February 25th. Sorry, I'm getting confused from another inquiry. But February 25th, if you could bring those back, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend. Now we might just suspend briefly.
Thanks, everyone.
While we
Thank you, Senator.
get our next.
Double check that scenic room are
Yep.
online.
Yep.